What is the Catholic Church?
I would say it's the mystical body of Jesus. So, as I said before, it's not an organization. If we do it that way, we're going to miss it. It's got organizational elements to it, So I'm a bishop. I'm a office holder within the church. But the church is an organism, not an organization. So it's a organism of interconnected cells, as I said, namely all of the baptized, gathered around Christ in a mystical union. That's the church.
But there's buildings, there's titles.
Sure. Because it manifests itself institutionally then. But
so are the sort of heavy things about that all have to do with pride?
Yeah, sure. Whatever
the sexiness of the buildings.
Whatever is corrupt in the church, of course, it comes from pride, from sin. And one thing I like about, the New Testament is so clear on that. I mean, Paul is in his little tiny communities. So before there was a Vatican or dioceses or anything, Paul has these little tiny communities of Christians like in Corinth and Ephesus, What's the one thing we know about them is they fought with each other because Paul's always upbraiding them and, telling them, come on, would you people get it together? And, who's bewitched you? And so from the beginning, we've been fighting with each other because we're made up of sinners. And, so one thing we do in Catholic ecclesiology is the official name for the study of the church is to talk about the treasure in earthen vessels. Paul's language again. The treasure is Christ. The treasure is the love he's bequeathed to the world. That's the treasure that we have. But it's always held in these really fragile vessels, namely us. And so it's going to be marked by corruption and stupidity and pride and everything else.
Well, nevertheless, there's a hierarchy. There's titles and so on. If we remove pride from the picture, so the best possible interpretation of the hierarchy that makes up this one organism, this living organism.
Mm-hmm.
What's the role of the Pope, for example? What is the role of a bishop, for example? Like, what is the role of the hierarchy in terms of the broader vision of Christianity, Catholicism as a religion?
I'm a devotee of this guy named Johann Adam Müller, who was a theologian early part of the 19th century. And he was part of the kind of romantic movement. And he said the purpose of the Pope is to symbolize and embody and draw together the unity of the entire church. So he's the personal symbol of the unity of the church. Who's a bishop? The bishop is the personal symbol of the unity of a diocese. Who's a pastor of a parish? He's the personal symbol of the unity of that parish. So he understood it not so much organizationally as organically again. It was like that around which the pattern organizes itself. And if you don't have that unifying figure, the community will kind of vociferate. And you see that all the time without headship, we would say. So it's more symbolic and organic than it is organizational.
So symbols for community, but there's such fascinating peculiarities to each individual symbol. There's different characteristics that make up the different people. They have different ways of communicating. They have different hopes and fears and all that kind of stuff. What if they're all symbols? What's the role of the different peculiarities of those symbols, of being an inspiring uniter versus maybe a stronger type of more judgmental kind of communicator, all that kind of stuff? I mean, can you maybe speak to the human part of these symbols?
Yeah, well, I might just shift to another image of shepherd. So that's a classic biblical image. And as a bishop, I walk around with this thing called a crozier, which is a shepherd's staff, right? So it's the symbol of the bishop's office. And the crozier, though, is a kind of in-your-face thing in a way, because it's got the end of it was meant to hold off wild animals, and then the crook part of it was meant to bring sheep back to the fold, right? Mm-hmm. So I walk in with that, oh, this is nice. Oh, look at the bishop coming in. But that's a kind of in-your-face symbol that I'm here to defend the church against predators, and I'm also here to draw people in who are wandering too far away. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. I mean, that's part of the role of the hierarchy and the Pope and bishops and pastors. Pastor just means shepherd, right? So I'm the shepherd of a parish. So that's okay. It's not like just all, sunshine and light and what a pretty image. The one who embodies the unity of the community is also the shepherd.
Okay. But again, leaning on the human thing,
Yeah.
The church is an institution.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've heard, but there is an element to power that corrupts.
Yeah.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely, as the old saying goes. Let me ask you something else that came up on the Reddit AMA.
Yeah.
Mega churches and the prosperity gospel. And you've mentioned that you may not be a fan. What are your views on this? And what are your views in general of money and power corrupting the heads of these institutions?
I don't like the prosperity gospel because the gospel is about Jesus' journey into radical self-forgetfulness on the cross. And he never makes a promise of earthly well-being.
Can you explain what the prosperity gospel is?
Yeah, the view that, if I follow Jesus and I follow God with great trust, that I will be rewarded with wealth and position and status in this world. It might be God's will, but I get that. But, Aquinas said this, that say I look at a very sinful person, I say, God, he's got a great house and he's richer than I am and all that. Aquinas says, yeah, but maybe that's a punishment. Because maybe all that is leading him away from God. And actually, that's God's way of punishing him. And the fact that you don't have wealth and a big house is actually a great gift to you, because now it frees you for doing God's will. So we can't read, God's favor in worldly terms. I would say God's favor is, am I awakened to deeper love? Then I know that I'm finding God's favor. Now, God might decide, sure, I want you to have this and that. I want to provide this to you. Fine. Then I say, thank you, Lord. How can I use it as an instrument of love? See, all the masters talk about detachment. And that's another reason I don't like the prosperity gospel, is though I'm getting attached now to all these material advantages. And I'm even seeing them as a sign of God's favor. Let go of all that. You let go of it and use it as a vehicle of love. So if you're rich, the right question is, okay, Lord, why did you allow me to become rich? So that what can I do? How can my riches be an expression of love? If I'm popular, if I'm healthy, okay, why am I popular? Why am I healthy? How can I use that for your good? I'm sick in bed. I'm suffering. Okay, Lord, how can I use that as an expression of love? So I'd rather measure it that way than through worldly success. That's why I'm against the prosperity gospel.
Okay. So there's don't seek worldly possessions, but whatever happens to you, good or bad, seek how that could be used to increase the amount of love in the world.
Right. The image I love for this is the Wheel of Fortune, which is a device in a lot of the Gothic cathedrals. And it's this great circle, right? This wheel. At the top of it is a king, and then it turns this way, and the king has lost his crown. And the bottom is a pauper. And then over here is a guy climbing up to power, right? And then in the middle is a depiction of Christ. And the idea is just very simple, but very profound, that the wheel is life. It's sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes you have power and popularity and prestige. Other times you're losing it, you're going down. Other times you got none of it. Other times you're coming back up. Okay, don't live on the rim of the wheel. It'll make you crazy. Every point on the rim of the wheel is a point of anxiety. Where you should live is the center of the wheel, where Christ is, right? Because that's the link now to the eternity of God. That's the point of love, where love can flow through you to the world. And then you can look at the wheel. You're a Beatles fan, right? I think I discovered that. I love the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And the song that always comes to my mind when I think of that image is John Lennon at the end of his life. So a guy that, rode the Wheel of Fortune like crazy. He was at the top of the world in every way. And then Beatles break up and he kind of loses it. And then he's at the Lost Weekend in the 70s, at the very bottom. When he died, he was just kind of coming back up again. But the song I always think of is Watching the Wheels, right? I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll because I'm no longer riding on the merry-go-round. That's right out of the medieval mystics, that he's not riding on the wheel. He's just watching it go round and round. That's the point of, the Greeks call it apatheia, and the Latins called it indifference. Not like I'm blasé. It just means I'm detached from success, failure, less success, more success. I'm detached from that. I'm sitting here watching the wheels go round and round because I'm not riding on it anymore. The mystics have always made that transition.